Hi, everyone, and welcome to this special report podcast with returning friend and brother, Mr. B. We've had him on in the succession of our podcast for the last 2 years. For those of you who have been longtime viewers and supporters, you'll remember him well. And today is a very special report. It's an exclusive report you're only going to get on this channel. You won't see him or this anywhere else. So he's really being gracious by giving us this critical information we need at this seminal time in history. If you're new to the podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share. It helps the channel grow and others to gain in the knowledge you're being afforded. And again, as a disclaimer, neither one of us are financial advisors. It does not constitute as financial advice. It's merely high quality information for you to use for your own personal discernimental authority. With that in mind, what you're going to be watching today is critically important. So please pay attention to those who need this, to need to hear that. Some of you do, some of you don't. It's per personal application. Take notes, rewind this back, screenshot, whatever you got to do to retain this information is critical. Mr. B is going to be giving us a very deep dive insight on the summation of the year, where he sees things at the end of this for the last couple of months. We're in Hypnotic November as of today. Happy Veterans Day to all the men and women that have served, and for the women who have supported their men at home or have been in the behind the scenes support in the military, whatever combination thereof. So we wanted to, get that out for posterity. And in the spirit of that, he's going to be giving you the remainder of this year's report into the first quarter of next year, where, yes, spoiler alert, we do see most likely the highest degree of probability of the crash happening for the Dow, the stock market, the crypto markets, as well as, most importantly, the real estate markets, so that as this global reset happens, currency godly reset happens, you good people can take advantage of not only the wealth, but the purchasing power thereof. It's the best of both worlds. We've been saying that consistently. And for those who've been following us for the entirety of our time on the podcast for just over 2 years now, thank you, Lord, for that, and your support, respectively, for watching. When he came on in 23, he took quite a bit of backlash from many of you saying he didn't know what he was talking about. That was crazy. Well, he was right. You were wrong. He was right. Just saying. And that's why he's back. He's been spot on the entire time. Did we want him to be right? No. Did he want to be right? No. But it is what it is. And now, benefiting from the hindsight of that knowledge, we can now look forward and see what lies ahead to prepare and protect you to be in the best position to, get the wealth and steward accordingly to all the places that God wants you to. And that's what he's instrumental in doing today. So getting all that out of the way, again, for those of you who don't know, Mr. B is a good friend of mine. I've known for almost 30 years. Hard to believe, but true. And he knew me when I was a little kid to where we are now. And he's been faithful, and that should tell you a lot about his character. He has been with Charles Schwab for the better part of 27 years as of late, and has a lot of statistical analysis knowledge in tracking stocks, bonds, the market, treasuries, precious metals. Yes, he's also invested in foreign currencies and bonds and cryptos, all the things we're in. He's got skin in the game. So he's been gracious enough to give us his time on this solemn holiday of Veterans Day. And so we welcome back to the podcast once again. Mr. B, thanks for being here. Thanks for being gracious. Welcome to the podcast again. How are you, good sir?
I'm doing great, John. I appreciate you inviting me to be on your show. It's always fun to do a recap with you.
It's always an honor, my friend. So I've set the table, I think, pretty sufficiently. So I'm going to shut up from here and back up. I know you have a presentation to share with people on the aforementioned items. So would you please be so kind as to go through what you see going forward?
Sure. I'll just bring up my presentation here.
And what we'll do, folks, at the end of his presentation, we'll ask a lot of the questions we glean that you want to know. And he'll, of course, as always, be gracious to go through them to the best of his ability.
Yeah, you bet. Whoops.
Okay, Mr. B, so now that you have the presentation up, the floor is yours.
Thanks, John. So in the past, we've kind of dealt more with silver and, the benefits of silver, using it as a store of value, more of the numbers concerning, just how undervalued silver is. In this presentation, we're going to target more gold. And it's been it's been in the news a lot lately. So I thought it'd be better to kind of just go after that. And so I entitled this presentation, And we'll be discussing the tailwinds for gold. And these are the things that we're going to be covering here. We'll cover the numbers, which I know you like. And then we're going to do a short presentation on a silver store of value realized. And then we'll do the current tailwinds to gold. There are many. And then we're going to discuss, are we really in a melt up? Is gold really a good investment? And then if we, depending on how long we go, I've got a little presentation on can you retire using gold and silver? And then we'll do the key takeaways and then question and answer. So without further ado, let's get started. John already gave you the standard disclaimer. And so we won't cover that. Okay, let's talk about the old targets for the market. My old targets were S&P 7,500. The Dow was 5,500. The NASDAQ was 2,500. The Russell was 3,300. And the reason I bring that up is we'll be changing those today because several of those targets have been met. And then the melt up's not quite over yet. So I needed to actually give you some new targets. The gold target was 3,400. And as you know, that one got blown out. Silver was 75. So we were, starting to make good strides towards that. My oil target is 60, was 60. The dollar, the Dixie was 83. And the Treasury 10 years under 3%. So this is back. I'm going to give you back where we've been since our last interview on the 18th of June. Back then, the S&P was 5,886. The Dow was 42,792. The NASDAQ was 19,560, 546, and the Russell was 2,113. And so the S&P was up 1.89 from where it was before. The Dow's up just slightly at about 0.5%. The NASDAQ was up almost 7%, and the Russell was up almost 1%. It's hard to believe, but gold back then was 33.77. Silver was 36.70. And even then, after, I think we had done a presentation back in March, gold was up almost 11.5% since then. Silver was up 7.94. Oil was way up at 73.47 and it had gone up 6%. The dollar index was at 99.05. It was down 5%. And the 10-year treasury was up 1.93 at 4.391. And these are all of them together. So if you want to rewind the presentation or the recording, you can see them all here in one picture. This is where we are currently. As of last night, the S&P is up to 68.32. The Dow is 47,368. The NASDAQ is 25,611. And the Russell is at 24.66. So the S&P is up 16% since June. The Dow's up 10.5%. NASDAQ is up a whopping 31%, and the Russell's up 16.71%. Gold, meteoric rise to 41.08. Same with silver, 50.48. So gold is up 21% since June, and silver's up almost 38%. Oil is at 60.33, and it's down 17.89 since June. The dollar is at 99.59, which is up 0.5%. And the 10-year treasury at 4121 is down about 6.15%. Okay, so these are the future targets. I raised my target on the S&P from 7,500 to 85, just because of the pessimism, and I just believe that we've still got a long ways to go before this melt up's over, based on my research. The Dow, I bumped up from 55,000 to 65. The NASDAQ, I believe, was 25, and it's up to 32,000. And the Russell was at 3,300, and I bumped that up to 35. So from here, we need to rise 24.41 on the S&P to get to my target. The Dow needs to rise 37.22 to get to the new target. The NASDAQ 25% basically, and the Russell is 42% to get there. So I raised my target on gold because it just blew through that 3,400 mark that I had previously made, to 5,000. Silver at 75 is now 100, which I think it's going to, I think, get there fairly easily. So that's a 21% rise, almost a 22% rise in gold. Silver, almost 100% to get to our target. But in the case of silver, I think we might get there, fairly fast. Oil under 60, and we might be under 60 today, but as of last night, we were just slightly over 60. So we're pretty close to my target there. The Dixie has been kind of stubborn. The dollar index has been, pretty resilient. And my target's still 83. We still have almost 17% to get to there. And then the 10-year treasury under 3%. We made a little ground, and I think as the Fed continues to cut here, we'll get to under 3%, but we're still about 27% to get to my target. So if you want to see all my future targets for the melt up and where we are right now, here's one picture to do so. Okay, so before we go on, John, do you have anything you want to say?
Well, I have some questions I'm tabulating, Mr. B, at the end, so I'll just let you roll through it to save time, but thank you.
Oh, you bet. Okay, so the next part of the presentation is a little story of the silver store value, about these 3 dimes. You may have heard it. There are several iterations of it, but I'll just go through it and put it in today's framework. Before we start, I will start off with this quote from Ron Paul. I want to just obey the Constitution. The Constitution says only gold and silver can be legal tender, and hopefully one day we'll get back to that. I think we will. Okay, this is a story of 3 dimes. One was created in 1964, one in 65, and one was created in 1966. As you can clearly see, they look basically the same, front and back. I mean, if you were to hold them in your hand, you might not even notice that they're different. They would appear exactly the same. So let's pretend you went to get a gallon of gas back in 1967. A gallon of gas back in 1967 was only 30 cents. And what I think is funny, the picture on the side, that was 1971, but as you can see on the sign there for Shamrock, a gallon of gas was under 30 cents. Okay, you pump a gallon of gas and take the 3 dimes from your pocket and pay the gas station attendant. One of the dimes was minted in 1964. One was minted in 1965 and the last was minted in 66, like we said. And the only reason I mention this is back in 1967, they all had the same buying power. They all look identical. But one of the dimes was different from the other two. The dime minted in 64 was made out of 90% silver. The other two, the 1965 and 1906 dimes, were made from copper and nickel. And the ramifications of the differences between the dimes will be meaningful as the story goes on. Now let's fast forward to 2025. Those three dimes have traveled in time close to 60 years. So you decide to do the same thing and use the three dimes to buy some gas again. When you go to the gas station, you shockingly discover a gallon of gas has gone up in price and is now $3.50 a gallon. It's probably a little more in California. You pull $3 bills from your wallet. You search in the car and find two more dimes in the ashtray, and with the three dimes that you've held in your pocket since the 60s, you now have $3.50 and enough to pay the gas station cashier. Well, this should be the end of the story, but I should tell you, since I didn't realize it at the time, I had more than enough money using those three dimes to pay for that 1 gallon of 2025 gas. And actually, I really only needed one dime to pay the bill. And you're probably asking, well, how? Well, if you remember, I told you that the dime minted in 1964 was made out of 90% silver, while the other two dimes were not. If I had recognized this fact, I could have taken it to a local coin shop and traded it in for between $3.73 and $4.50. Imagine that. By keeping the silver dime from 1964, that one dime could buy more gas in 2025 than three dimes could back in 1967. And that's what we call a store of value. Over time, the buying power remains the same. What happened to those two dimes clad in copper and nickel? Well, by the time 2025 rolled around, they had lost over 9 times their buying power, or 90% of their buying power. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of holding precious metals like gold and silver. As the currency continues to be debased and lose buying power, silver and gold will continue to hold that value. So now you know the story of the three dimes. Tell someone you care about or your children. And the difference between what currency is and that difference with real money. And remember, two of those dimes were currency and lost value over time. The other dime was actual money and retained its value over time. And now you understand the difference between the two. Make sure you choose the right one. And so to finish up that presentation, we've got this quote from Glenn Gould. Behind every silver lining, there's a cloud. Okay. John, do you have any questions or do you want to say anything?
No, thank you for that. Looks good. Press on, good sir.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the main crux of this presentation, the tailwinds to gold. There's historical tailwinds, dollar debasement, tier one asset, 2019, central bank buying, interest rate cutting, gold revalue by governments, portfolio change to 60-20-20, and stored true value set to explode. So we'll dive into each one of those. And we'll start this presentation from a quote from Norm Franz. Gold is the money of kings. Silver is the money of gentlemen. Barter is the money of peasants, but debt is the money of slaves. Okay, well, we're going to talk about the current tailwinds for gold. Starting off with historical. For centuries, gold coins were minted and circulated as currency, and the gold standard system linked national currencies to a fixed amount of gold, stabilizing exchange rates and facilitating global trade. As a currency, gold coins were first minted back in around 550 BC and were used as currency in many countries before paper money was introduced. Its use as money was driven by a need for a standardized, easily transferable form of exchange. As a store of value, gold's durability and scarcity have made it a reliable source of value for millennia, a role that continues to today. As an international standard, the gold standard, established after 1873, was a system where countries pegged their currency to a specific amount of gold, which helped stabilize international trade and exchange. Okay, role in international finance. The gold standard required nations to settle international trade imbalances with physical gold, causing gold reserves to flow from nations with trade deficits to those with surpluses. The decline of the gold standard. The system eventually collapsed in the 20th century, most notably when the U.S. entered its gold standard in 1971, shifting to the global financial system to one based on fiat currency. Global debt. Global debt is at a high record, reaching nearly 338 trillion at the end of the second quarter of 2025, and is projected by the IMF to exceed 100% of global GDP by 2029. This increase is driven by factors including rising government debt, particularly in the US, China, and other advanced economies, and the higher cost of serving this debt due to increased interest rates. GDP ratio. The global debt to GDP ratio is around 324%, with a new record high for emerging markets. Projected increase. The IMF projects global public debt will surpass 100% of the GDP by 2029, the highest level since after World War II. What are the drivers? Well, rising government spending, geopolitical tensions, and higher interest rates are all contributing to the debt increase, making it more expensive to service. Dollar debasement. From 1950 to 2000, $100 in 1950 was worth just $13.92 in 2000, a decrease in purchasing power of 86%. $100 in 1975 is worth only $16.40, representing an 84 decrease in purchasing power. Since 1925, the dollar's lost 95% of its purchasing power. And to be honest, I would think it's actually closer to almost 99%, maybe even over 99%. Gold becomes a tier 1 asset. In banking and finance, a gold tier 1 asset refers to physical allocated gold that is classified as a tier one high quality liquid asset, or HQLA, under international banking regulations like Basel III. This classification allows banks to count the asset at its full market value toward their core capital and liquidity reserves. Central bank buying. As mentioned earlier, under Basel III banking regulations, physical allocated gold was effectively recognized as a tier one zero risk asset for banks in participating countries as of 2019, encouraging greater institutional demand. This designation allowed banks to count gold, like we said, at its full market value towards their capital reserves, similar to cash and government bonds, rather than at a 50% discount as previously allowed under some national discretions of the older rules. So I believe that a lot of this buying of gold is due to central banks recognizing that gold is now a tier one asset. Interest rate cutting. Federal Reserve has started a rate cutting cycle. Most recently, the federal funds rate to a target range of 3.75 to 4.0 after two consecutive rate 25 basis point rate cuts in September and October, and are expecting more aggressive rate cutting as the global economy weakens. Gold revalue by governments. Throughout history, gold played a pivotal role in monetary systems, and there's been several major revalues reshaping the global economy. In 1934, President Roosevelt increased gold's official price from $20.67 to $35 during the Great Depression, effectively devaluing the dollar by 40%. And I'm not sure if you remember, but Roosevelt actually went out and confiscated all the gold from the country, and then devalued the gold, which of course made the buying power for each person holding dollars, about 60% less, 40% less. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement established gold as the foundation of the international monetary system, with the US dollar pegged to gold at $35 per ounce. Then in 1971, President Nixon ended the dollar's convertibility to gold, fundamentally changing the global monetary system and in what's now known as the Nixon shock. So is gold revaluation likely in the near future? Several political and economic indicators suggest increased consideration of gold revaluation among policymakers. Even Trump has said, he who has the gold makes the rules. Secretary Bessent has said, we need a new Bretton Woods agreement, and we have assets that we could sell and revalue. Even the Federal Reserve issued a research paper examining gold in revaluation scenarios. So it appears that gold revaluation is on the table, and it's part of the discussion. It once was a kind of a fringe idea, but it's becoming more mainstream. Portfolio change to 60-20-20. A shift from the traditional portfolio, the classic 60-40 split of stocks and bonds is being challenged because bonds have lost their ability to reliable offset stock market downturns. If you remember the last few years, Not only when the stock market went down, the bond market went down too. So this is an indication that that old paradigm of 60-40 is not working. And so they've changed it. There's a new allocation to 60-20-20. The model allocates 60% to equities, 20 to bonds, and 20 to gold. And the rationale being the strategic shift is a response to the modern market dynamics, that persistent inflation, high level debts, geopolitical instability, and which have all diminished the protective power of traditional bonds. And so they're making gold as a core holding. And with this new approach, gold is repositioned from a marginal hedge to a core portfolio asset. And it's expected to act as a more resilient hedge against against the global economy. And I'm a believer that Morgan Stanley came out a few weeks ago, and Jeffrey Gunlock, with this new portfolio structure, and these are just huge banks with amazing amounts of money. So as they start to make that shift into gold, you can expect the gold price to rise with all that money, chasing after a rather, fairly small market. Stored true value set to explode. Gold has been publicly demonized as a pet rock. I think even Warren Buffett used to refer to it as that. And I think it was a way to push citizens towards the dollar, and they wanted you to own the dollar. So gold has been suppressed by governments and banks over the last 50 plus years because they wanted you in the stock market. They wanted you to use dollars. And this has prevented the metal to trade at its real market value, preventing citizens from recognizing how worthless the dollar has really become. Right? So, once the public does that, then they're going to start moving away from the dollar, and you can see that already. I think the cat is out of the bag, and even even some of these big banks are starting to move their assets towards gold. Also, gold has been suppressed to allow central banks to turn their worthless fiat currency in trade for a first-tier asset to reinflate their reserves and turn away from their weaponization of the dollar. So recently we saw Russia, when the United States froze their reserves because of the Ukraine war, you saw many countries start a buying frenzy of gold because of this weaponization of the dollar. And as gold returns to the world economic stage as real money, record buying has led the price reaching all-time highs, and that buying shows no signs of abatement. It's just I just believe that we'll hit 5,000, 6,000, and who knows, from that point. And we'll end with this quote from J.P. Morgan: "Gold is money. Everything else is credit." Okay, John, and do you have anything that you'd like to say?
Yeah, a lot. There's a lot to unpack, but I want you to, again, Mr. B, to be able to get through everything, and then we can put this all together. So appreciate that. So if you want
Okay.
to continue, feel free.
Yeah, just stop me. I've got a couple more presentations, but if you want, just stop me where, you'd like to finish up. And then
Sure.
whatever we don't cover, we can cover it at a later time.
No, that's fine. Please proceed.
Okay. So we we're at the point where we really need to ask ourselves, is gold a good investment? Well, is it? Is gold really a good investment? And the reason I ask this question, honestly, in all the years I've been alive, I've never had one person, not one, tell me the virtues of owning gold. Still to this day. Never has one single person pulled me aside to let me know that I should consider gold as a long-term investment. I've worked for over 25 years in the financial sector. Excuse me. And I never heard it mentioned once. It wasn't part of the modern portfolio split of 60% stocks and bonds. It went completely unnoticed by my friends, family, and investing colleagues for my entire lifetime. When Hank Paulson fired the big bazooka during the great financial crisis in 2008 and took $800 billion, close to $1 trillion, and bailed out the big banks, that got my attention. When that happened, it was the first big salvo during my lifetime where I could see the government debasing the dollar in a big way. So after that time, I began looking for a way to hedge myself against debasement. And eventually I settled on physical gold and silver as my choice for that protection. And the government has really made it hard because they've been printing money at such a fast pace since 2008. It's just been, meteoric. Janet Yellen and Ben Bernanke as our Fed chairs have just really accelerated that pace. And sometimes I wonder if I've accumulated enough gold and silver to be enough to protect me in a global meltdown or a currency default. Past couple of years, I really started to run the numbers because I wanted to know to see if gold and silver were worthwhile. And were they really keeping up with the dollar? Were they keeping up with inflation? When I did the analysis, I was astounded to discover that actually gold has been the best performing asset since 2000. Total return from 2000 to mid 2025, gold prices have risen by over 1,000%. And after yesterday, it's probably more than that. Annualized return. On average, gold has provided an annualized return of approximately 10.9% over the last 25 years. Comparison to the S&P 500. Gold's annualized return, approximately 9%, was higher than the S&P's approximately 6% for the same period. Again, this revelation really took me by surprise. I figured gold was a great store of value, but I never really considered it as as a really good long-term investment. These numbers proved otherwise. And when I reflected back on my investing career in the stock and bond market, I'd done well, but never came close to the returns I could have had just by investing in gold. I called up one of my colleagues, told him what I had found concerning gold, and asked him if he would validate my numbers. He thought my numbers had to be wrong and said he would do some investigation and follow up with me at a later time. A few days later, he called back and said that my numbers were spot on, but he even added some extra research to what I had done that proved investing in gold was even better than I had thought. What he did was run a model through AI using nominal quarterly gold purchase equivalent to $1,000 in October 2025 numbers, starting back in 1975, which is 50 years ago. And he wanted to determine the annualized inflation adjusted rate of return of gold. And the numbers that were returned were close to 9%, which we had already validated. We both had to agree that if we had purchased gold instead of contributing to our 401k accounts over our working careers, our returns would have been much better. The numbers prove that gold has been an excellent long-term investment. And as I mentioned earlier, I really believe that the true value of gold is, because they've kept it suppressed, hasn't really accelerated to its fair market value. So even though it was, 10.9% over those 25 years, I honestly believe that that's way low because, again, gold really hasn't settled on its true market value. So that number will I believe will really go up. Okay, the next part of the presentation, are we really in a stock market melt up? So I believe we are when you look at it in a nominal way. And if you look at this chart, you can see that the S&P index has reached all-time highs recently. And, many experts describe this as a market melt up because of the rapid rise in price. But if we compare the S&P against the price of gold, can we really say we are in a melt up? The recent rise in the gold price makes the S&P appear to be more in a downtrend. So when you compare the S&P accelerated rate on what gold is doing, you can see that, based on that, the S&P really isn't doing as good as you think. So it may feel like your stock portfolio is doing great in nominal terms, but in reality, against the backdrop of inflation debasement, is your stock portfolio really doing that well? Can you retire using gold and silver? Well, that's a good question. But I'm coming to the conclusion that you could supplement and or completely use gold to fund your retirement. I'm sure you've heard the commercials of companies that will help you convert your gold or some of your retirement savings into a gold IRA. So it's obvious, there's a market for it, and many retirees are recognizing that need and turning to the protection of gold and silver. I also believe that you could do the same thing using physical gold and silver. So if you've gone to a coin shop and purchased gold and silver, have it in your possession. I think you can actually supplement your retirement doing the same thing. And I plan to do it myself. And I want to tell you a story of a couple, this older couple that I saw that was actually doing this. I was in line recently to purchase some gold and silver at my favorite silver and gold coin shop. And like I mentioned, there's this older couple in front of me, and they were holding a couple of rolls of silver eagles. And if you don't know what silver eagles are, they're the sovereign silver coins that the U.S. Mint does every year. And anyway, you can buy them. And anyway, they had a couple of these rolls. And so since I was standing behind them, I was able to eavesdrop on their conversation. And they were traveling the country in their motorhome. And what they would do is periodically turn in a couple of rolls of silver to the local coin shop in the city that they were in when they needed more money. They mentioned they had been investing in gold and silver for since the 70s. So apparently almost their whole entire retirement was being funded by physical gold and silver that they had accumulated over the past 50 plus years. When I overheard this, I thought, oh, this is something I would like to do as well. What a great way to spend your retirement. So I got busy and created a spreadsheet to help me create a 20-year retirement pension using gold and silver to supplement my Social Security. My goal is to add $1,000 a month of spendable income using physical gold and silver. And how much gold and silver would I have to make this goal a reality? Now I've built this spreadsheet. I don't think we'll cover it today. We'll go over it it probably deserves a little bit more time in a in a later uh, in a later show. So I'm gonna not bring up the spreadsheet and go through it. We'll get onto the questions. But anyway, you may want to do that yourself if you are a collector of gold and silver, to maybe, build your own spreadsheet and kind of figure out, how gold and silver could maybe help, fund some extra money in your retirement. So let's go over the key takeaways of the presentation. Gold and silver offer a great store value, preserving your buying power. Currently, there are several tailwinds to propel the gold price higher. Are we really in a stock market melt-up, or does it just feel that way? Gold is an excellent investment and has continued to be so over the course of time. And gold and silver are an excellent way to supplement or fund a retirement. And the last key takeaway that it's not on this list is that I believe gold and silver are still mispriced and have not been allowed to reach their true market value. So I believe that the amount, the price of those two particular metals are set to explode. So, keep that in mind when you're thinking about buying gold and silver. And that's it. I'll turn the time back over to John for some questions.
Well, first of all, Mr. B, let me just take you off we can take you off the share now. We'll go back here. First of all, let's take a moment and just enjoy that amazing presentation and deep dive of information. I thought it was awesome. I hadn't seen it before. You hadn't shared it with me. So it was organically explored with me, just like the entirety of the audience. I pray that they concur and that they get every bit of knowledge dropped of the juice of that information that they need to extract for their own personal use, because that was pretty impressive. So kudos to you, Mr. B. That was awesome. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, obviously. I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different things, and we'll just flow through it as you and I typically do, both here and offline. So first thing, Mr. B, is let's look at the oil targets. As you said, it's been below 60, and I know Bob Kudla and Bixweir think it's going to be 55. Personally, I think at some point when it fully tanks, it'll be closer to 20, because he's going to do so much drilling. We have new technologies coming up, like the med beds and many other unexplored technologies that they've suppressed from us, the deep state, that we're not going to eventually need oil anymore. We're going to get to that place. But along the way, we're going to have to take this navigational path. So with that in mind, what do you think? Do you see it going below 55 before it rises up to $200 and then drops down to its true price once the melt up and bust has occurred? What are your thoughts there?
My thoughts are that it could get down to 50 in the melt up, but I believe in the bust, it'll get to that 30 range that you're talking about, or perhaps lower. And then when the commodity super cycle starts up, you could see oil eventually reach $200, $400 a barrel, in the coming decade.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Another person that I've followed and collabored with, TC, Twisted Christian, the Wealth Transfer. Some of the people know him. He's gotten a lot of things right over the years. So kudos to him on that. He's talked about an oil crisis coming just for a period of time, for, who knows, could be a month, 2 months, but you want to be prepared for that, and having, the reset with the currencies and the metals and the bonds and the cryptos and all these mechanisms we talked about for many years is a great way to insulate that. Of course, as you would also agree, buying land that has mineral rights on it, oil, natural gas, a water source, so you can be self-sufficient, is a great way to insulate, so that you're good to go, because you don't want to just be storing, gallons of gas in your garage that could potentially catch fire or expire if you don't use them in a timely manner. So again, having these other wealth mechanisms and doing like Solomon did, having the eight wells of well transfer helps mitigate against that. And more importantly, helps you to help other people around you, friends, family, would-be family, business colleagues, communal outreach, etc. So I tend to think you're right. And I believe that President Trump come December is going to start to really lower the energy costs now that the government shutdown is optically coming to an end, which we knew was part of an agenda to drain the swamp ultimately. And they're going to come out with the new initiatives. We're going to see the super crypto bull run sometime, I believe, either this month or early December. So again, a lot of these things are going to coincide at the same time on purpose. So he can use those to his advantage to de-weaponize the D state and at the same time bring the energy cost down. And as you know, Mr. B, you bring the energy cost down with oil, it brings down the cost of gas at the pump, diesel, which brings down the cost of food, which brings down the cost of electricity, which brings down the cost of flights because people then, in my personal opinion, not wisely flying right now unless they have to for work or familial emergencies or something like that. They're dealing with that cacophony of chaos at the airports. But we believe now sometime in December that will level off and people will experience much less expensive, in general, flight expenses because of the energy component. And energy, like gold, is going to drive the old/new economy because which is what we're really doing is resetting back to where we should have been pre-1913 and pre-1971 Nixon Kissinger, as you sort of alluded to tacitly in your presentation. Which brings me to my next question, Mr. B. With respect to gold, I think we've established for a while, our audience is well heeled as you are, that gold and silver are both very wise investments, whether it's in storage of bars, physical possession with coins, and maybe 1 ounce, 10 ounce bars that you can physically put in a safe or in an underground bunker, what have you. But also, 401k and IRA conversions. We've recommended that for quite a while. We have a returning relationship, as you are aware, in my group and the team with Noble Gold, with Colin, who was with us about a year and a half ago, and he's returned back because we felt now with the channels, thanks to our audience's devotion and sharing this, the channel has grown to a degree where it warrants and facilitates him being able to come back at the right time, and also with the uptick and spike of precious metals, which is only going to continue and precipitate, as we know, it's really the ideal time for people to get involved. And what was staggering to me, and you and I have talked about this, is, I've talked about this with Greg Manarino, Bill Holter, Lynette Zhang, all of them conclusively agree that less than 1% of the population knows about precious metals. And the simple answer is the deep state wanted to control the status quo in their favor, keep the wealth, lie to us, re-inculcate the masses, our children, children's children, us, into believing this propagated lie so that we would never take advantage of it. They have to tell you the truth in plain sight, but they don't have to tell it the way they're supposed to. They can manipulate it with predictive programming, movies, tele-live vision, etc. And so because of that, like you said, your entire lifetime, no one has ever suggested it to you. And that's why they've been able to keep less than 1%, but they have to let the 1% go as collateral damage. That's us, and hopefully grow that number as we share and educate others, upwind, family, friends, community, to take advantage. The more we synergize, the better it is for all of us, not only individually, but more importantly, corporately as a community, which is ultimately the bane of this existence of this channel and the sole ethos of what we're working to do with brothers like you helping. So that all being said, and again, no one's holding your feet to the fire, Mr. B. I'm just asking for your own sort of best hypothesis. How high do you see gold is starting to go back up again as the time of this broadcast, as I take a look? It's at, and again, this is in the futures markets, as you would know, 41.2620. I haven't checked Gold Watch. And silver is, I believe, upticking over 50. Now it's almost 51. So it's gaining back some of its losses. So with that in mind, how high do you see it going for the remainder of this year into January next year and beyond?
I see gold at could hit 5,000 before the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of technical analysis that says that, can hit 8. I would think that maybe even 8,000 is possible after the market meltdown. after the bust. So, of course, when the bust does occur, we'll see that even the precious metals go down for a short time, but they'll come back with a vengeance. And I believe that within a year, we could see gold at 8,000. I know your numbers are probably a lot higher than that. I mean, I've heard people say 20,000. It all depends. Some black swan event could happen where the Treasury could come out, Donald Trump could come out and say, hey, we're going to revalue gold to 20,000, 40,000, and just completely, upend that rise with one fell swoop. So, I think anything can happen, but my longer term forecast would be, 8,000, I think.
Okay, thank you, Mr. B. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think it's going to eclipse 5,000 this year. We believe that what he's going to do is with these $2,000 checks, that's the beginning of the SARA. So what he's doing is he's getting a lot of the legals and the corrupt out through the OFAC list you've seen, through Doge and a whole bunch of other mechanisms, Gold Card. He's going to amalgamate all these mechanisms, and that will be the beginning of the SARA coming out with stable monthly checks for people as he drains. Again, he's already taken out the Fed, as I've shown you years ago in 2020. He used the COVID pandemic to basically bake the Fed into Treasury. I've shown the audience documentation of that. It's well sourced. And so this is the optical keyword unwinding of the old Fed system. What better way than to let the Fed destroy itself, right? It's like a pariah that just eats itself from the inside out. More printing, dropping of interest rates, as you said earlier. These are all telltale signs to those of us in the know in our audience that basically the Fed is being removed, and he's now using tariff money, which is not taxes through the corporation to the people, but is constitutional. As you'll note, Mr. B, tariffs have been going on since the late 1800s when we started as a constitutional republic. And so it's just a staple of, true money. And he's going to be collecting external sources from all the countries that have been robbing us through the mechanisms of the IMF, the BIS, the World Bank, and the Fed, and so on and so forth. They've all been in cahoots to keep us down, to enrich themselves. No real surprise. But now that the curtain is being pulled back and people can see the emperor has no clothes and it was all just a deception show, now the question becomes, when are people going to do something about it? And I've always seen, Mr. B, that when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain to change, that's when they'll change. And everybody's comfort zone is wholly different. But I think personally, as you said, I think President Trump in the first quarter next year is going to audit the Fed, Fort Knox, and show the people we don't need the Fed anymore. Let's get the public on our side so it's not a dictatorship. And at that point, it's going to go 20 to 25,000. And I would further submit, Mr. Bean, you can give me your thoughts too, is that silver will run parallel with, I agree with Bix Weir. I think silver is going to run parallel with gold because, as you've said many times over on this podcast and to me privately, the world is awash with gold. We've got it. Australia's got it. Zimbabwe's got it. Iraq has it. Iraq has increased their rate to 171 tons. It's one of the largest nations in the Middle East. And I think they're lying, by the way. I think they're holding a lot more gold than what they're telling us. If the numbers here in America are suppressed from previous administrations, well, we know that that's a copycat concurrency throughout all the nations throughout the world as they become nationalized and sovereign. As we go, the rest of the world goes. So we become the baseline. So I agree with you. I think it's going to be over 5,000 this year. It's, as I said today, it's just looking at it right now. It's almost, it's approaching 4,200. It's clawing back. And I think it could easily hit 5,000 or more this year. And again, he revalues it and makes silver go parallel with it. Silver, we know, is much more finite supply. And you mentioned the central banks buying up gold, but we're going to be removing the central bank system out of America and throughout the world, declawing them. They have plenty of gold, as you said, it's a wash, but what they don't control, meaning the banks, is silver. As you noted, the LBMA, I've had Andy Sheckman on, we've talked about this many times, LBM is openly admitted in London, they don't have the silver to back the speculators and the shorts, right? All the people that are over leveraged, you could say, They don't have the
Oh,
silver to cover that. And that it's just a matter of time before COMEX admits that, and here in America as well. Because again, you talked about in your last presentation with the Yellow Brick Road, the Vatican, Parliament, DC, all the triangulation of the cabal are all being defunded and defrocked. So here's the next question, Mr. B. I'd heard the next 22 that once gold hits this very specific number, I don't know why, but 5790, meaning $5,790, that officially ends the Fed. What are your thoughts on that?
you know, I'll be honest with you, John. I don't know. I don't know if I can really add any
Insight?
insider information on that. That number just seems so arbitrary to me, and that would have to be, like you'll have to. I'll accept your experts on that part of it, because I really don't have I don't have a response for that.
That's
I'm
fine.
sorry.
No, that's authentic. I don't really know specifically why that either. There must be some sort of internal calculation that they have an algorithm that is determined for whatever reason that that's the magic number, if you will, like with sports, the cutoff rate before you move into the new system. But that's why it's
Sure.
important. I asked you about 5,000 because if we see that happen this year, which I think is, like you said, highly likely, or maybe gets, I don't know, 5250, 53, maybe it flirts with 5,700, but then it touches it in January when we start the new year into the new constitutional republic. A lot of that demarcation and shift over may be happening for the midterms. And so that again brings me, Mr. B, to my next question.
Hey, before you go on, I
Please.
did want to mention something about silver.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, Michael Oliver, who is a momentum analyst, has mentioned that he thinks that silver is going to hit at least 150 to 200 in a short amount of time. He believes it's breaking out of a 50-year, just suppression. And when it takes off, it's going to be big. Also, Francis Hunt mentioned that silver could get to 333. The charts, he's a technical chartist, and he believes that, we're on our way to that particular number. So I just wanted to let you hear that, because there's other experts that are respected that are now calling for some pretty big numbers in the silver price.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. BM. It's funny you said that 333, a cabal number. They tell you in plain sight.
Isn't that funny?
See what I mean? They have to tell you. That's why I chuckled. We've talked about this. Mike Maloney, I also respect, has even said more aggressive numbers between 2 and 350 for silver. Andy Scheckman, good friend of ours. I've talked to him privately, and also on his channels, he's talked about once silver unwinds, there's no stopping it. And again, that's why I say we believe silver is going to go 1-to-1, not 6-to-1 against gold, because it's got to be a level playing field, just like the currencies. It's the only way it's going to be fair, as President Trump said in 2017, his first term, with when he had the Speaker of Japan, I think it was Shinzo Abe, had in the country, and a Japanese reporter asked him, I believe it was February, March of 2017. We all know the video clip. Currency manipulation means currency devaluation, which means currency reset. Anytime you hear those words together, as you know, they correlate. So it's the only way you can do equal fair trade and commerce. How are you going to have fair currency revaluations without fair gold and silver revaluations? One backs the other. They beget each other. You can't, right? You know this, I know this, and our audience, I think, knows this in their instinctual knowing as well. So again, that's why everything goes hand in hand. But I appreciate your insights in addition on the silver, and I'm right in line with those gentlemen. Not surprised at all. I'm frankly surprised it took this long, and that's only because they've been trying to manipulate down the paper shorts and the speculation side, and that's why the LBMA is out of silver, and because all the speculators are calling in, as you know, the paper, because they've recognized the writings on the wall. That's the long and short of it. Make sense?
Well said.
Cool. So let me make sure we're on the same page. So President Trump has stated that July 4th, 2026, which we know is the official 250th anniversary of our nation, as Victory Day. We've also heard him many times, Mr. B, refer to it. We all have as, say it with me now, the golden age. Can't make this stuff up. He's not going to wait until then to pull the plug on the old Fed system. From a statistical economic standpoint, and again, folks, remember, Mr. B is coming at this from the old system, the Keynesian system. He's showing you the demise of the old as I show you the birth of the new and how those two marry very well and overlap. So with that in mind, Mr. B, wouldn't he need about 2 quarters of solid GDP growth, including the crash in the first quarter of next year, in order to level things out in the market to give confidence to the public as a whole?
I think so. From the Keynesian side, that's, that's not, my picture's not quite as rosy. So again, from the Keynesian side, if we play out like I see it, we'll get the bust starting in, late first quarter, could run a little further than that. But once the economy, the global economy rolls over, it could be a year. And I believe that there's going to be massive money printing. And so this isn't the Nassara Jassara side. This is what I see from the Keynesian side. So my hope is, after you hear that prediction from me, is that we definitely go the Donald Trump way, where, we get the bust, he's able to, reinflate the economy, and we get a couple of quarters of good growth going into the the Jubilee, our 250th birthday.
Yeah, no, I think you're more or less right. I just had a woman on yesterday, Marjorie Wildcraft, she's a good friend to the channel. She's wholly responsible for helping people with food growth and sustenance and sustainability and working with farms and all the importance that presents post RV. You actually even could say pre RV if you have the ability to do so. And she had told me, Mr. B, and I told you this offline, this is for our posterity, for our audience, that she doesn't know you, you don't know her, you guys have never met. One of her people is a pretty big analyst at Credit Suisse and another at JP Morgan. And all three of you have said that you see the end of the melt up this year into the first quarter of next year, and that by March, there's going to be a crash. Could be somewhere between 50 and then 80% for the crash, which also has ripple effects, no pun intended, for the crypto market. So we need to take, as I've said to you folks, take your profits along the way when this super crypto bull run happens somewhere here in the holiday season. It's so obvious to me, Mr. B, that President Trump and his team are timing all of this stuff for the holidays, running right into next year to give people, as you said rightly from the beginning, about a 2 to 3 month window jump to get positioning with precious metals, foreign currencies, bonds, cryptos, land, food, quantum energies, and, that not just med beds, but, free energy, and investing in companies that propagate that and promote it is another well of the wealth transfer, if you will. And of course, as you mentioned, owning precious metals, storing it both on and off site, and all of that comes with that. It's clear to me that he's giving us, for those of us, a window or a tincture in time who can see this clearly, a window to get in and through the other side. And also, I have to add, is going, as effectuate massively the real estate market. Several months ago, as you know, I had Lynette Zhang on, and we talked about this, and I thought her comment was pretty telling that in Japan, several months back already, I think this summer, their commercial real estate was down 90% and the residential was 95%. We see here in America anywhere from an 80 to 90+% drop in the residential, because we're going back to 1950s pricing, because you're going to be backing with precious metals, which makes the US note, the Treasury note, not the Federal Reserve, which has neither federal or any reserves, gives it real stability and weight and doesn't fluctuate. It's solid. It's God's money. We know this. So that means there'll be no more central banks. There'll be no more interest rates. There'll be no more inflation, which is artificial. It's just a hidden tax. All this. I'm just doing this for the audience's sake. So it's going to bring the price of real estate way down. So it's going to give God's people and just good people that are in this the wealth, but also the purchasing power. I call it the ultimate P&L spreadsheet. When you, in simplest terms, folks, you work a job, you bring in income, you got that's your profit. Your L is your loss is your overhead, all your expenses. As energy goes down, right? You can then go to one single income again instead of two. You got mom and dad home. You've got, if you have kids, you give them more of the balanced stability they desperately deserve and need, as do you. You start to bring back God, the nuclear family, with real money, real food, real conversations, real body parts, real everything, instead of this illusionary script we've been living in this matrix for far too long. And so, yeah, that's what we're seeing. So, again, I know you don't know the exact day, but would you say that March is a reasonable estimation, or possibly even a little bit a hair sooner for said crash? And if so, where do you see it starting and bottoming out?
I do. I think late first quarter of 26 is a good target to when the bust begins to happen. I believe that it's going to be ugly. I think it's going to be a global, a global deflationary bust in a 1929 style depression. I believe that the market will go down 80% or more. It's going to be brutal. And I believe that real estate will be carried down along with it. And it'll be something, at least the way that I see it, is that the Fed's going to try to save the system, and all the central banks around the world will try to do the same thing. And there'll be huge incentives that they'll be throwing at the economy. And I believe that they'll, print a bunch of money, put it into the system, put it into the banks. That'll fail. So then they'll continue to print and print, and this will go on for a year until the economy's somewhat stabilized. But I believe the U.S. alone will print 20 to 30 trillion dollars, almost double what we have debt wise to to save the system. That's what I'm saying, but it's going to be ugly.
I agree, but we both know they can't do that. It's at that point we're already on the other side of the Rubicon, or the other side of the bridge, right? And we both know, Mr. B, that talking to Bill Holter, who is a stickler for numbers and getting things right. He doesn't play around. You know that. Uh, he and I have both agreed, even Lynette has agreed, that the real quote unquote debt is probably closer at this point to 320 trillion. But what the beautiful thing is that President Trump's doing and bringing us in a new system, most of that debt is not ours. The consumer debt is a small fraction of that. The rest of that's the deep state. So all he has to do is hit the gold standard, flip the switch, and that debt just automatically goes away, because Fed debt was all artificial, unconstitutional debt. So that means if you were holding a mortgage, a debtor's prison by Black's Law 4th edition dictionary, or in your case, Mr. B, like you've paid off your fraudulent mortgage, whatever it was, 5, 10 years ago, you're going to get all those monies back, because all that stuff, all the interest on your mortgage, credit cards, car payments, student loans, medical debt, quote unquote, all of that's going to be in one. You already hear President Trump saying, ladies and gentlemen, maybe you've seen Mr. B or in our private group, that all the insurance monies should be brought back to the people, right? Because we're going to have all these tranches of money coming from all different iterations. If we got into a car accident, God forbid, we could make somebody whole. We don't need insurance, and all the glut of lawyers trying to, clog up the system with their billable hours, which I'm well familiar with from past experiences. We're going to have, again, all these tranches of money that will be able to help us, but we will be the new 1% to help the 99. Typically in the Bible, God left the 99 to go after the one. I believe in this case, he's going to do the inverse. He's going to use the one to go after the 99, which leads me to my next question, because I know I go through this, you've probably gone through it, and I know a whole bunch of people in our faithful audience have been dealing with this for years. And here's the key question. You talked about it. You said, quote, that no one in your lifetime had ever told you that gold or silver was a solid investment, mostly because they were lied to and were deceived to believe from many generational MK Ultra brainwashing techniques that gold, silver, bad, pet rock. We've got, Warren Buffett saying that, who's now saying, quote, if he's even around anymore, I'm going quiet. Why is he going quiet? Because he knows the writing's on the wall. That's why. He knows the system's already cooked and he's just ducking out the back door. We need to do like he's doing, like the old Rush Hour 2 movie, Follow the Rich White Man in parlance. So the question is, I have this, other people have it. We have parts of our family. We have I'll be respectful as I always am and say we have a seasoned contingent of society, right, above a certain age, that we try to talk to about this and say, oh, no, I'm going to hold on to my 401ks and my pensions and my IRAs and my retirement accounts, and good old fashioned dollar is strong. You talked about that with the Dixie. We know that's artificially rubbish. It is nowhere near 99, whatever it is. And it's just a matter of time before the trap door on that falls down as well. What do you say, or what encouragement can you give to this advanced aged part of society who is ardently and pridefully ensconced in the belief that the dollar is king and it's strong and it will never change and blah blah blah, and gold and silver are foolish investments that will never come to pass? How do people, what can people do other than pray to get around that mindset?
Yeah, that's hard because you're dealing with an age group of people that have lived their whole entire life on one investing mode, and just their whole life is built around a certain way of doing things. So changing that up, there's the saying, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. And it is, because people don't like change, especially older people. And they don't want their world, screwed up. They've planned for this and, their retirement in a certain way. And so anything that goes against that is kind of a threat. So the recommendation that I would give that age group is to do research, to go out and maybe check out some videos on, gold and silver, maybe some crypto, just to get kind of educated on what's out there. Now, I will say this, it's the older generation that are turning to those gold and silver IRAs that Noble Gold is selling. So on some level, intrinsically, they know that gold and silver have value. Getting them to buy crypto, maybe not. Getting them to buy, certain things, but they obviously know the value of land and land and gold and silver, precious metals. Because, at one point, when you would go to the store, you were using real money. You were using real silver. I remember my mom saying that when she worked in the store up in Idaho when she was a little girl, people paid with gold and silver. They didn't pay with paper money. So I think they have enough intelligence and to go back to at least gold and silver, because that's the way it was, and it might be a way that they remember. So but I just think it's important to see that the fiat-based system is starting to implode, and to try to get as much paper assets over into something physical and do that as much as they can.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I was referring more, Mr. B, to people who talk to that contingency of society, not so much to direct people, although there's merit to that as well. And no, it's not a matter of intelligence. I think it's a matter of pride. It's like Mark Twain said, right? It's easy to convince, it's easy to con people. It's difficult to convince them they've been conned, right? Nobody wants to admit that they got it wrong for 90 years or 50 years or whatever, right? It's hard, but in that humility and that ability to grow and learn and be hungry comes knowledge, right? The Lord says in the Bible, those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So there's fruit and benefit in being present and open regardless of age, regardless of circumstances. Just because something worked for a certain period of time doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. And conversely, just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean it's not going to happen. That's the mix-up that I think is the disconnect for a whole lot of people of all varying age groups, right? So yeah, and Noble Gold, our chief sponsor, does offer 401k IRA conversions, and also the retail side of it for metals for people like me and you who just want to buy, every day. And we'll leave that
But
link to the video if anybody wants to take advantage of it.
I want to add this to, sorry to
Yeah,
interrupt,
no, go ahead.
but when you do a self-directed IRA, which these gold and silver companies handle for you, like Noble Gold, you can also do a self-directed IRA to or a 401k to buy land. They'll even let you buy, there's some that'll even let you buy crypto now. So, if you're an older person, you have some wealth in an IRA or the stock market, you may want to go out and talk with some of these folks and say, if land is your stuff, maybe you can invest some of the portion of what you have in your account towards land. I'm not recommending anything, but it is possible to go after an alternate asset other than just stocks and bonds.
That's good to know. Thanks, Mr. B. I have Colin on tomorrow from Noble Gold, so I will query him about that and see what his take. I think it'd be a good conversation piece for the crowd, for the audience especially. So that's good. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's take this one last question for today, since we've been so comprehensive. We talked about the anticipated, again, hard and fast timeframes, but approximation, because you've been right, as I said in the beginning of the podcast, from November of 23, when I first brought you on, all the way 2 years later, the numbers you have given don't lie. They tell a story, and it's vetted itself nicely. So we've talked about what we believe, you and I, as the height of the melt up, the bubble, if you will, the expansion of the bubble gum, if you were a kid blowing a piece of chewing gum, the highest apex of that bubble being somewhere between now and January, and then it popping sometime in, give or take, March, right? So now let's shift our focus to what a lot of people here are interested in. I get it. I'm part of that too, and you are too. And that is the foreign currencies, the dinar, the dong, the zim, all that kind of stuff. So you had said that you believed that your approximate thesis was that we were going to see somewhere between that melt up and the bust period, right? Somewhere in that buffer zone, we would roughly get a couple of months from the exchange process to get out of the current Keynesian system into the new system before said crash happens. So again, these are not hard and fast timeframes. These are just what we see. We're in hypnotic November right now with Kim Clement. I think we can agree we've seen some pretty crazy things happen. We're not even at the middle of the month yet. We only have about 2 weeks left till Thanksgiving. Christmas, I shall make them happy. We believe this is the year that combination of things, the checks and no taxes and money's coming from different areas, the crypto super bull run. And of course, now we believe the global currency reset. Some feel that things are not at their worst yet, but here's the thing. That worst has sort of waves to it, as you've said, in the crash part. That's not one thing, it's cycles. So taking profits along the way, like with the cryptos, we highly recommend, it's what we're doing ourselves, is going to be paramount. What we see is that once the crypto announcement is made, which we believe will be sometime this month, we think he's timing it perfectly, like I said, for the holidays from, just before Thanksgiving and going all the way into, the Christmas period, which would give us roughly a 4-week window thereabouts, approximately. We see I have to be careful how I say this, the non-public exchange has to happen first, which will then lead to the public exchange, which we think will be sometime between, at this point, based on all the information we're gathering, the prayers that we've done, the spending time alone with the Lord and asking the hard questions, would be somewhere between December, January, which would then give the people, as you said, a couple of months to, get trust, buy the metals, buy more currencies for the next wave, cryptos, take the profits, and then, hold their positions as it comes down and buy the dips. Same thing with stocks. If they want to do stop, sell, put options like you and I are going to do, or even swing trading, which we recommend people get into that, because that is another form of a wealth transfer that people should be, in our humble opinion, taking advantage of. In your own personal opinion, what do you think about that? And does that ring true in your spirit?
Yeah. As far as the Nasara side
Mm-hmm.
and the cryptos and the currencies, that makes sense to me. And I think it parallels nicely with the Keynesian side. I believe that if we were going to just look at the Keynesian side, again, we don't do dates and rates, but
Nope.
I'm thinking that the zenith of the melt up is going to be somewhere in that March timeframe. So, which means things aren't going to roll over until then. So, yeah, you're if things play out the way that you think they are, that would give your constituency, a couple of months, like you said, to you know to get protected, buy real estate, buy gold and silver, etc. What my plan is, at least if the Keynesian side plays out, is my targets. So as soon as my targets on the stock market get to those levels, I'm pulling the plug and I'm going to uh, sell everything and go into cash at that point. But that's on that side. And of course I have, because everything's in a brokerage or in a bank, it's tough to extract that much money out and to put it to work. Where if you have the currencies and stuff like that, it's a lot more easy you'll have a lot better chance of deploying those assets into some of these real assets that you can in that 2 month period. But anyway, that's why I give my projections, or where I think my targets are, is because to me those are milestones of when it's like, okay, we're getting close to where the economy is going to bust. And
Mm-hmm.
so my goal is to completely get out of the stock market, and either short the market or completely get out. But like you're saying, if Donald Trump comes in, that stuff, if it goes within the Jasara side, all that stuff could go away anyway. So it might not, it might be a moot point.
Well, he's going to do that. There's no doubt. He's preparing the public to own the Nasara Jasara, not us, the people that don't know in the public, right? The 99%. And that will insulate us, but that does not mean there won't be casualties along the way. If there's a lot of people that are not holding any foreign currencies, not holding any bonds, I'm not talking about, I'm talking about the ZIM and other bonds.
Right.
Just for my audience sake, for clarification, because I can't see them face to face. That don't hold any cryptos, as you said, own land, but they maybe own, like, they live in a suburb and they own, half an acre at best or something like that. I have some family who's wholly in that position. They live in very compressed neighborhoods. So they're going to have to, it's a light and dark situation. It's good and bad. Everything has two sides to it. Two things can't exist in the middle. There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. And unfortunately, the people that are ardently prideful, who will not die out, will die on that hill, will not come off that cliff and say, you know what? I don't even give the possibility that I could be 1% wrong. I'm just going to ride or die with this notion, and, hope that I'm right, and, fake it till I make it kind of a thing. Sometimes people, I know I had to go through this in 2008. My situation where I was upside down on a house in Connecticut and had to move across country, and I lost everything. And I said, I do not ever want that to happen again. I need to learn from this at a really young age. And thanks, by the grace of God, go I, that I learned the lessons and was put in the position now where we are 17 years later by him. And so This is going to be, this should have happened in 99, 2000, should have happened in 08. The bill is way overdue. As you know, central banks only last 40, 50 years. Even Leviticus 25, 9 to 12 talks about in the Jewish calendar, the Hebraic calendar, a 50-year jubilee and a resetting of the debts. This baby is overdue pregnant to be born. We cannot continue this anymore. Everything has to come to an end, even the bad, right? And so what we see is, like I said, I'm taking what you do with what we do and putting them together for the audience to make it easy. Height of the melt up, end of this year into early next year, and then the bust end of the first quarter. And then he's going to, use Nassar Jassar and other things because when banks go out of business, they can't, this being in business, you can't collect debts when you're out of business. Any business owner goes out, he just liquidates everything. It's a fire sale, and he just writes his loss or his or her losses off and doesn't try to go after, their vendors or the public and say, hey, it's time to collect, because that's part of the agreement of writing it off. The same holds true, as Mr. B, for banks. So yes, if you bought a mortgage and you paid it off, you'll get monies back. If you own a mortgage and you haven't paid it off, it'll be written off. It's just the cleansing of the cycle when the corruption is removed. Unfortunately, we will have people who will not move off that post, as I said, and maybe, unfortunately, we wish it weren't this way, but people sometimes learn hard lessons when they go through hard times. It's the only way to wake them up. And again, I'm not saying we want that, but that's just the way that some people only learn. They have to run into a wall before they're like, okay, I got to go the other way, and this isn't working anymore, and cut bait. And it's like Noah. We're at a get on the boat seminal moment, Mr. B. You know this. And we're trying to sound the alarm, and less and less people are laughing, less and less people are mocking, less and less people are being foolish about being judgmental about things they know nothing about, and they're getting the message. But are enough people getting the message? That's for people and God to determine. But we genuinely, as you and I, want people to succeed and win in this as much as possible. But everybody's got to make their own decisions, their own discernimental conclusions for themselves or their families. And we're just trying to do our part until we sign off to get them into a winning position. Because you and I both know this information, thanks to you and our team, is going to age extremely well in the aftermath of this process. One last question, because I want the audience to hear it from you. So you own foreign currencies and bonds and cryptos and metals, correct?
Correct.
What was the point for you? Because when I first told you about this years ago, you weren't sold on it. And I know many people in the audience are in a similar position, which is why I asked the question. I want them to hear from you, of your own words, of your own volition, your testimony as to what was the tipping point, Mr. B, for you, where you were able to go, okay, I know the value of gold and silver, but I now also see how it connects to these other things Jon was telling me about. What was that moment? What was that moment for you? And when did the light go on? Like, when did it hit you?
Oh, man, I don't know. It's been so many years ago. But I just remember some of the stuff you said way back. I was like, oh my gosh, where did this come from? And then I was resistant. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to just have an open mind and start, looking into some of this stuff. And a lot of the conspiracy stuff ended up coming that you were spot on. And so gradually through time, it was something that I just believed more and more. Recently, the XRP stuff, as I start doing the deep dive in that, the Ripple and stuff, you gave a great presentation on, like gold and silver and copper and how they back the different, XRP flavors, which I thought was great. So that's, for me, it's just the accumulation of so many years, starting back probably about 10 years ago, I'm thinking, where you came out with some of this stuff, with the dinar and stuff like that. And I was like, and some other, conspiracy, which you would think conspiracy that have later, become true. But then, just doing research and watching the videos that you send out. And so, yeah, it's been quite a journey. And I really appreciate you for setting me on that path. And I know that your subscribers and viewers, I'm sure, feel the same way.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. B. That's very kind of you. So folks, since obviously my brother is going to be incognito, you're not going to be able to reach him, so we can't get to that part. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to talk a little about a couple of our sponsors, and then Mr. B, I'll give you the last word of anything that you want to say to our audience today, as I typically do with my other guests. Words of encouragement, inspiration, whatever it is you want to share with them from the heart, I'll give you the last word. If you are looking to get with our main precious metals subscriber, Noble Gold, which, as I said, I'll have on tomorrow. This podcast is being done, as you can see today, Tuesday, on Veterans Day, so you can see it in real time. Tomorrow I'll have Colin in and we'll address more of these microscopic issues, precious metals, as far as 401k, IRA conversions, or just, gold and silver physical purchases. They are one of our trusted sources to use for whatever that's worth to you. We'll leave that link in the description. If you use my code JD Metals, you will get special pricing, 3 to 4 day delivery, and $9,995 silver and gold, which is virtually, from what I can tell, and you, Mr. B, almost unheard of. In fact, when I said that to you, you didn't even know what I was talking about. So number two is on the foreign currency side. We know if you have them or you're looking to add to the cachet of dinar, which is going to be the ribbon cutter to go first. And we're going to talk about this on Nick tomorrow on his podcast about specific articles that point to the inevitability. Also, today's interesting, folks, that this is happening on Veterans Day because the countries copy each other, meaning Iraq and the US and many other countries. There is a mirror effect. One of the things I told you a long time ago, Mr. B, that I think you saw the light on. Today is election day for Iraq. So we will see if Prime Minister Soudani stays in power or if he's ousted and an interim an interim prime minister comes in. Could it be a body, the second one, and the nothing, something of Kim Clement? We'll see. Remains to be seen, but they're going to have to pull this to get the confidence of their people to keep that power, and they're going to have to start being more transparent because the Iraqi citizens are fed up. They want their oil pensions. They want their dinar revalued, and it all starts with them before it ever hits us, and rightfully so. And then, of course, Vietnam will be going right along for the ride, shortly thereafter. This. We've shown it to you. We've confirmed it with all of your knowing and suspicions and your own deep dive researches. And then, of course, that goes down to all the Southeast Asian countries Kim Clement talked about, Thailand. There's so many countries there. I'm just trying to, nothing else coming to mind, but Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Rupiah just came to mind. Thank you, Lord. And then, of course, the Central American countries, the Venezuelan Bolivar, eventually El Salvador, Colombian Peso, and all the other 209 countries and provinces. We have a great resource for that, where it's completely uncirculated. It doesn't matter if you have circulated, uncirculated. The banks will take them. There are no redemption centers. There's no 800 numbers. Don't get caught up in that scam. Just make an appointment. Start building friends with wealth managers now. Start making buddies with them now. If you haven't, do it. Make friends with farmers if you live in those areas. Do it. Do not wait until after the fact. The whole point of this process is to get you in early, ahead of the curve, so that you can take advantage and then help others. So if you want to get those currencies, we'll leave that link in the description below here in the video. Now, I'll shut up with that. Mr. B, last words that you have, sir, for the audience today.
I really don't have much, John. You pretty much covered everything, but I just wanted to thank you again for having me on your show and wish all your viewers happy holidays.
Yes, thank you, brother. Really appreciate you being here, taking your hard-earned time and effort and energy from family and business to do this so that the other people can benefit. And I speak for the audience when I say, and the team, we appreciate and salute you for that. So happy Veterans Day to you, brother. I'll talk to you later. Happy Thanksgiving to you and the family. And I have a feeling I'll be seeing you in the physical, not too distant future. So thanks again. God bless everyone. Take care. Thank you, Mr. B. And we'll talk to you later.